Okay, hello everyone. Thanks again for joining. Today we've got a bit of a treat for yourselves. So we'll be doing the normal 15-minute session, and at the end we've got a quick sort of 5-minute quick fires round with Nikita. This is truly an honour. I'll let Nikita introduce herself, but suffice to say that I've worked with Nikita for a little while, and she's been a very big part of my own personal career progression. So it is indeed an honour, but I will then hand off to Nikita. And if you can just tell me a little bit about yourself, background on what you've been doing in the past 5 or so years, and and just a brief introduction.
Great, thanks, Adam. I'm Nikita Johnson, founder of REWORK. So I guess 5 years ago, REWORK had launched. We were kind of on the way with our events program. Officially started the company in 2012. We held our first event in 2013. And so we're an AI events company. So had the pleasure of Adam presenting at our events, which has been great over the past few years. So initially we focused on emerging technologies. So it was a really broad look at rapidly advancing technologies from AI to synthetic biology to 3D printing to nanotech. And over the years, the kind of first couple of years, we focused more and more on AI, machine learning, and developed into deep learning, which I guess is one of the kind of sectors that we're most well known for now. We've been hosting our deep learning summit across the world, from San Francisco to London to Singapore, since 2015. And we also host our Women in AI series as well, which is something that we're all really passionate about at REWORK, being a female-led company. So we've been hosting Women in AI dinners and events and our podcast series for a few years now around the world as well. So yeah, it's been a real honour to meet so many really passionate people in the field, Adam being one of them. So that's a bit about myself and a bit about the background to REWORK as well.
Yeah, and so it's actually kind of it's an interesting time that we're going through right now. And I guess the sort of main question that a lot of people will be kind of thinking about is like, how's REWORK kind of maintaining relevance during these trying times, with coronavirus? And are you still active, and what's sort of happening with you guys?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously there's been a huge shift for, nearly every single business, but definitely for events sector of businesses. Obviously social distancing and conferences does not work particularly well at the minute. So we've had to pivot and look into different options. So we have taken some of our summits, which are, we're planning to host one actually this week in Austin, which is now a virtual Applied AI Summit, which is taking place online tomorrow. And some of our events later this year, which were due to take place in London and New York, are also going virtually, which has been great. We've seen a really good response actually for events, both from speakers that are really keen to still share their current research and applications, as well as some of our partners that still want that kind of exposure and looking for new ways to connect with new business as well. So it's been a really positive response that we've seen for companies moving digital. And then also, as soon as kind of the lockdown in the UK anyway started, we wanted to really find a way for people to connect digitally, not just hosting our larger events, because obviously that takes quite a long time to prepare and curate the agenda and do all the planning, but we wanted a kind of shorter term solution to bring people together online. So we started an AI for Good webinar series in April. So we've held a couple now. We're doing 1 or 2 a month, one on AI for pandemics, for obvious reasons. We held one last week on AI for accessible education. We've got a couple next month on climate change and crisis prediction. And really the thinking behind that was, first of all, as I said, to continue to bring people together in a digital format, but also we wanted to focus on kind of, I guess, the bigger picture of AI. So I know that the current pandemic has seen a shift in a lot of and in a lot of the way that we think individually and as a society, I think, on what's important and how we should be spending our time. And I think we're lucky to be able to continue to be able to provide a platform for people to share their research in AI, but also thinking about how can it be applied in a really positive way, and looking at the bigger picture of healthcare and education and climate change, and how can we really tackle some of these bigger challenges with the current tools and methods and research that we have.
Do you find like building the brand, how's that been for you in general? Like, what could you talk us a little bit through the journey? And so I've got this sort of list of questions here that we can sort of drill down into. But one thing that I put out on LinkedIn, kind of a request for questions and Twitter, and one of the things which seems to be quite a prominent I guess sticking point is there ever such a thing as trying too hard?
I would say, I mean, I'm not an expert on building a brand, I wouldn't say, but in terms of trying too hard, I think, yes, you want it, well, it has to be genuine. I think anything that you do, especially as the kind of the head of a company, when any decisions that you make are kind of continued throughout your team, it has to be done kind of, you have to believe in what you're doing and you have to be passionate about it. And if you're not genuine, I don't think other people can really tap into that as much. I think it would be more difficult to get the message across and for it to be something that people really kind of grasp and believe in and follow you. So yeah, I think you probably can try too hard if it's not something that you're fully kind of behind.
So that's actually quite a good point. I didn't expect it to come from that area, but I that's something I strongly agree with. So, I've got a lot of listeners from different backgrounds, and we're happy to bitch now and again. And I do feel that my own personal experience is there are a lot of fakers out there, right? They're looking for clicks and reshares, and building, share my course, which is really kind of minimal investment. And yeah, I am feeling that, and I kind of feel like when we look at the brands which are succeeding now, especially REWORK, right? And then in general, the sort of wider media franchise, it seems to be the ones which are more raw and more kind of upfront and hands-on. I am hoping that, as we kind of now with more people invested in our time at home, we kind of bypass this more kind of surface, sort of superficial material. And so it is a good point. But I want to kind of ask you a little bit more around, so that can we kind of drill down on this and think about like reaching out to people. I mean, you have had huge success building building networks and growing people. I mean, my own personal growth professionally, and I can account for a lot of people I've actually spoken to at the events, who have been there, 2 or 3 times before. There have been people that have, because of you, have made escape velocity, and like, so there must be some magic sauce there, right? So there must be kind of, is that all natural, or is there a lot of kind of pre-thought and investment in how you bring these people together and scope, who's the future talent?
I think it's a bit of both. I think a lot of what kind of what we've done over the past few years has been through word of mouth. It's been a huge part of our brand, really, especially when you think back to the very first events we did in London 7 years ago. It was all about applying technology for a positive impact on society, and that was kind of central to what we were wanting to achieve. So by having that message that we were sharing with different tech communities, that obviously attracts a certain type of person that's really interested in working in that field and collaborating with others. And then when we held our first Deep Learning Summit in San Francisco, we only had about 200 people that the venue was capped at. And it was the first Deep Learning Summit that had been held that was really focused on the most cutting edge technology at that time. So because of that, a lot of the presenters had worked together. There was professors and PhD students who have then gone on to kind of lead Google and OpenAI and different things. But they obviously, that network was there right from the start, and because of the community that I think came to those first few events, then word of mouth really spread that we were bringing together really people that wanted to share their research and collaborate with others and look at real world applications and case studies. Kind of, so right from the offset, we said it wasn't a case of you can come and pitch your technology, or it's not a marketing presentation at all. It's all got to be quality research, cutting edge, and real applications. So I think it's a case of you have to get it right from the start when you're dealing with a community that's word of mouth kind of spreads quite quickly, and it's quite a close-knit community. This was obviously 5 years ago. It's obviously AI has expanded significantly since then, but at that time, word of mouth was really key to what we did. So, and I think that those first few events where people had good feedback on the connections that they made and what they learned at the events has really helped us to build that network over the past few years.
Yeah, I can attest to that personally. So, I mean, you guys were one of the very first sort of major size sort of conference organizers and events organizers in the space of deep learning, particularly when most people didn't even know what it actually meant. And so, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that, you know, there's a lot of advanced foresight, and it does sound like you focused more on the fortitude of the actual subject matter. And so this is going to lead me to this kind of controversial question. This is, I think, predominantly a American and British issue, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on it. And I know I'm from one side in finance, and what's your thoughts on this? So you may have heard Elon Musk has had quite a bit of a rant about people moving into finance, and he's not the only one, right? So there's, I think Andrew and a few others have kind of lamented that, you know, there's so much talent which seems to be drawn towards the finance industries when they could be working for, you know, a small AI startup. Like, first question is, like, where do you see that really is, and second is, where do you see that going? Do you think the trend will continue, or do you think more people will move towards these AI kind of startups and companies?
I think the best way I can answer that question is through, so at all of our events for the past couple of years, we've held a Rising Stars session for 16 to 21 year olds to send us a submission of a presentation that they want to share with the community at our events. As exactly as it says, Rising Stars, so that people that are kind of coming through school at obviously quite a young age, so that they can showcase what they are working on. And a lot of them are obviously doing it in their own time. They're not even at university yet, so it's something that they're doing it with school and just researching themselves. So they have to be passionate about it, I think, before they're spending their own kind of time on that. And the topics that we have submitted all all follow the pattern of how can we apply AI for a positive impact on society. So they range from looking at how can we apply deep learning to eradicate disease, how can we use AI to combat cyberbullying, what is the kind of future, what does it hold for humanity and AI, how can we look at robotics and using them in social circumstances. So I think from that, and we've probably had kind of, I don't know, between 15 or 20 speakers in our Rising Star sessions in the past couple of years, and all of them have had the focus of their presentation has been on solving a problem in society. So I think that for me shows some sort of signal of where 15, 16, 17-year-olds are wanting to spend their time. Obviously, there's lots of things that come into play as you get older, and there's more financial issues that you have to take into account, which maybe they don't have currently at that age. But that seems to me to be showing what their passion is at the moment anyway.
Yeah, that's really good, because I mean, personally, when I first got into the industry, I won't lie, like many, the ka-ching that really pulled me in, right? So that was a big driver, but additionally, it felt stable, right? So I think my own sort of caveat on this would be is I think maybe what might be the turning point is more of these AI companies can provide a better future and provide more stability, whereas maybe before 10 years ago it wasn't clear. A lot of these I think there's a very famous Chinese investor who talks about 15 years ago he'd had to beg on people's doors to get their sons and daughters to come and work for him for a tech company. And they were like, no, my son's going to be a lawyer, my daughter's going to be a biologist. But now they come knocking on his door, to the point where they like turn up at his office. And there was one gentleman who'd actually chained himself to the front of the office to say, I'm not moving until you give my son a chance. And so he talks a lot about the progression of the mindset, and I think maybe what you're saying kind of just ekes that out. And it does make me think then, so this is a question, if something that you can come from the top of your head. Is there any particular, like other than myself, is there any particular success stories that kind of come to mind in terms of your sort of your interactions with people that have been coming to your events? Is there any one thing, that maybe one or two that stand out that you can maybe share with us?
Well, I think going back to the Rising Stars, we have had quite a few people that have come back to us a few weeks after the events. Again, as I said, 15, 16-year-olds that are still at school, saying that they connected with somebody at Amazon or at Facebook, or for a startup working on renewable energy, or there's been a few different examples, and they've been offered internships, and they've been offered work experience to come and find out about how it really works, working in when you kind of get into the working world and out of school, even before going into academia. So we've had really positive feedback on that. So I think that's great, because that's what our events are all about, is bringing together people from different sectors, different backgrounds, different stages in their life even, to collaborate. And it's something that we especially see in the Women in AI dinners that we do. We kind of see that organic mentoring, which has happened without kind of us trying to prioritize that at all. It's just, it's happened when there's been attendees there that have had 20 years experience in the sector, and then you might have somebody that's just kind of a recent graduate that's trying to get into the field, and then we've had organic mentoring partnerships that have come from that, which have continued over years without us having any involvement at all. So yeah, so I think that's a really positive thing to come from bringing people together.
Like, where do you see the future of sort of leadership, tech talent, tech leadership? Do you see that this trend of people coming from diverse backgrounds continues to increase, or do you think there'll be a plateau and there'll be another sort of winter of recruitment? And what do you see that, how will that impact the progression of tech and AI for good as the landscape changes?
Well, I think I touched on it earlier. I think this current shift of having COVID-19, this global pandemic, has meant a lot of us have just had to change, or maybe rethink, what we really spend our time doing and how we prioritize our time. And so I think that's one thing. And perhaps that means that people are looking for more kind of positive ways to influence society and for the greater good. Because we're all faced with this current pandemic, which I don't think too many people had expected. So yeah, I'd say that's one thing. And secondly, with regards to in our current time, we are now all interacting much more on the kind of virtual side than we had done before. And now we're completely reliant on that digital way of working, which does have a lot of drawbacks, and I'm sure lots of people would be keen to just get back into face-to-face meetings and things again. But on the other side, for us anyway, as a company, in the past few weeks, we've had a lot more companies and individuals contact us from countries that we haven't hosted an event ever, saying we're really keen to get involved in your virtual summit or in your webinar or work together on a podcast. So I think it's opened lots of new doors in that sense as well. And I did just touch on the mentoring side before. So because of that organic mentoring that had happened at our Women in AI events, we were in the process of launching this year a London-based Women in AI mentoring program. That hasn't happened because of obvious reasons. So now we're moving it online, and we've seen applications from all over the world. So I think that is something that we didn't expect, but it's a really positive outcome of what's happened. So I think that we'll continue to connect digitally anyway in the meantime, and it just means that we can connect with more people. It means that there's less barriers now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of how I see it. I kind of see this as being really tightly linked to the open source. So I think if we kind of if we imagine tech again 10 years ago, it was highly locked down. It was restricted. The barrier to entry was extremely high. Yesterday we had a gentleman talking about his challenges of just getting past that initial barrier. It does seem to be decreasing, whereas 15 years ago in COBOL, there was a 15-year entry barrier. So it does seem that as we have more people joining, different backgrounds, easier access, the open source community has they kind of go hand in hand, and I kind of see that the future probably we will be able to roll out better products quicker and more efficiently. But I'm going to cap myself on that, and I'm going to move on to 20 quickfire questions. Are you happy to take 20 quickfire questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Excellent. Right. So the rules is I have a question. Try not to spend more than 5 to 10 seconds on each one. You're allowed to pass. Excellent. Right. So here we go. What's one thing that you really like about London?
Parks.
Okay, good one. What's your favorite part of your job?
Seeing people grow within the team that we currently have, seeing their kind of skills increase.
Excellent. If you could spend an evening with a famous person, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Elton John has come to my head for some reason, but that's really random.
Oh, he's brilliant. I saw him in Perth at a football stadium once. Oh, I stood next to Elton John and Vladimir Putin in an airport in Poland a long time ago. But he was still very popular. Okay. What's the last project or item that you've worked on?
The summit that we're working on tomorrow, the virtual summit.
Describe your job with one word.
Fun.
What do you do to relax?
I go for runs.
What got you into REWORK?
I wanted to bring together people with a similar passion to apply really rapidly advancing technology to change and solve challenges in society.
What's the last thing you made with your hands?
The last thing I made?
The last thing you made with your hands?
Oh, I painted a birthday card for my dad.
You're allowed to pass on some of these. So the last person you emailed?
You.
Oh, of course. I'll need to caveat that one for the next round. Okay, so what advice would you give yourself 10 years ago?
Oh gosh, I think 10 years ago I wouldn't have been expecting to sit here today to talk about how we met at an AI conference.
Yeah.
Expect the unexpected. Nobody knows what's going to happen too far ahead. So yeah, don't worry about it too much.
That's good. That's a good answer. Where do you see REWORK in 5 years' time?
Oh, that's tricky. I think I probably would have said something else a few months ago. I think for 5 years, I would say there's a good chance that we'll still be continuing with the hybrid event model. We'll be hosting in-person events where we can, but also opening it up virtually to a lot more people than we perhaps expected a few months ago.
What website or app do you waste your most time on? Do you waste most of the time on?
Instagram, definitely.
Yeah, guilty on that one. If you could go anywhere in the world for an all expenses paid holiday, where would you go?
Oh, I would like to go to Vancouver Island.
Would you visit Mars?
No, I think there's enough places on Earth that I haven't visited yet.
What's one thing you can't live without?
Porridge oats.
Wow, that is by far the most unique answer I've had yet. Okay, what do you think will be the biggest challenge in the next 10 years? That can be for you or for humanity or for anything. You can answer that in any way you like.
Well, I think trying to navigate how we're going to have the new normal that we're all talking about at the minute. Nobody knows what that's really going to look like. So it's going to be a work in progress, I think, for the next few years.
Good answer. What's your favorite movie?
The Great Gatsby.
What hobbies do you have outside of work?
Running, yoga, and because of recent weeks, I've started painting as well a bit.
Profit, purpose, progression, and persistence. Rank order these four. So profit, purpose, progression, and persistence.
Purpose, I think it's got to be at the top. You've got to have purpose.
Yeah.
And then I think progression. What was the next one, sorry?
Yeah, so you had profit, purpose, progression, and persistence.
Purpose, persistence, progression, profit.
Very good, very good. That's the one I would go for. So the last one is always a good teller. Who do you admire the most?
Oh gosh. I think it has to be my parents, as cheesy as that might sound, just for being good role models in terms of working hard and being nice to people.
I have to say it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I think this is a good way to end these ones. And I think, to be honest, I think we probably answered 4 or 5 of them in the same way. So it does show that we have kind of similar mindsets. I haven't heard of the Gatsby movie. Is that the one with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, he got memed quite heavily in that, if I remember correctly. The one where he holds he holds the wine or the wine.
That's the one. Yeah.
So at least I know it. But no, it has been a genuine pleasure. I do wish you all the best in your endeavours, and I hope to get you on again in a future session where we can maybe talk with another guest and talk more on the sort of deeper impact of AI. So yes, it has been a pleasure, and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.